Okay, I'm Myron Claridge. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I'm a retired prosecutor. My interest in railways came from two uncles who were engineers on the CPR, Canadian Pacific Railway. And I used to sneak up on the diesels to North Bend in the Fraser Canyon when I was younger. And then one summer I spent working on a ballast gang in Alberta and BC, so that furthered my interest. And currently I'm with a bunch of guys who run little live steam engines, gauge 1 engines, and we have garden railways. And so this, I've always wanted to, I always wanted to go up with my uncle on a steam engine, but of course they went before I was old enough. And then he ended up running the Royal Hudson 2860, and I missed that. So this is my opportunity to get on a steam engine, and he actually fire and then be an engineer, or pretend to be an engineer.
We won't be going as fast as the Royal Hudson. I'm sure you. And so guys who've never been here before, we got some pretty steep grades and some pretty sharp curves. So you didn't get prosecuted for quote unquote for getting a.
No, I knew when to hide.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mike.
Next, I'm Vicente. I'm from Los Angeles, and I'm a musician. I played the piano for a bunch of colleges and schools, as well as work for a church. My interest in trains started when I was really young. My grandfather loved trains, and he shared that love with me. We'd watch train videos and try and get to as many heritage railways as possible. So since I can remember, my first job that I said I always wanted to have was to be a train engineer. So here I am trying to learn how to do it.
How to do it? How long have you been a professional musician?
Probably for the last 12 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Good. We're glad you finally got a chance to try this thing out. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Aaron. I live outside of Denver. I drove down this morning.
Where outside of Denver?
Outside of Parker.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Right.
just south. I've ridden every one of the historic railroads in Colorado, including this one a few years ago. And as soon as I heard about the engineering farming class, I had to take it. I've just been fascinated by trains my whole life. I've got a garden railway that I run in the summer, and then I've got trains running around the ceiling in my basement all year long. It's just in my genes. Thought there'd be a few women here today. Just kidding.
We've had a grand total of 2.
I bet.
In all the years
That's 2 more than I thought. I'm on sabbatical right now from my job. I'm a crisis manager, and taking 6 weeks off, starting with the fireman class and finishing sabbatical with the engineer class. So kind of bookends it. Then I'll go back to work.
So if we have a crisis, we know who we can call for help.
We have
We have
a lawyer and a crisis manager.
There we go.
This is sounding good so far.
So we can, at least we can keep you out of trouble. We can't fix it. We can just keep you out of trouble.
That's great. Good. Please.
And I'm Jonathan, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I spend most of my time in Brooklyn working as an architect. I work for the Brooklyn Academy of Music, which is a Brooklyn or New York-based cultural organization, like Carnegie Hall or Lincoln Center. We do various performances, dance, theater, film, all of that kind of thing, and I run their capital projects department. And I've been interested in trains pretty much, most of my adult life. I had a grandfather that I never met because he died when I was, like 6 months old. But he worked on the railroad. He worked for the Seaboard Airline, and I have an older brother who had model trains when I was a kid. I sort of latched onto that and kind of took it off the deep end. And I've been interested in trains pretty hardcore since I was 12, and I'm both a modeler and just a student of the railroad, and I've always loved steam locomotives, and I just wanted to know everything about them, so this is pretty much as close as I can get to learning how to deal with them. So.
Yeah, this is one of the things that makes this place unique in that we always consider ourselves a bit of a time capsule anyway. rock onto a property and have it look pretty much the same as it did 75 years ago. And we have a sister organization, the Friends of the Compressors and Toltec is a volunteer group that really do a lot to make that, to help preserve that look. But it's that look and the ambiance that I think makes it special. So when you come up here, you can actually do more than just run the throttle. You can experience the surroundings as well. So it's a good thing for us. So that's all the way from Brooklyn. Do you get the long distance prize? I think you do.
Probably, yes. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. Well, sometimes we've had people from all over the place, including Australia. So we sometimes, Mike, come on, have a seat.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay.
Gonna have to get another glove too.
We found it's on a rock right outside Chama Station.
Oh, well,
Okay.
who found it?
I did. I picked it up and put it on the rock.
Thank you. I was wondering where that thing went.
Okay, Jonathan, I'm glad you're here. Chuck, you want to?
Chuck Proudfoot. I'm a just retired Presbyterian church minister, where I spent a career of 45 years doing rural and small church ministry. Was in a parish in a town called Alamosa for a while. Currently living in central Arizona. I've been a student of the railroad since we started. I have an undergraduate degree in Colorado history, which is why I want to know exactly where you live. And my major thesis paper was about an agreement between the Denver and Rio Grande and another railroad called the Denver South Park and Pacific on joint operating, and that was my major thesis, for which I did original research. I have never had enough money to take engineer, steam, or fireman school. It just was beyond my means, and so for my retirement in April, the congregation bought me this seat. And I went, they've never seen me speechless, but for about 10 seconds I just stood there and went, you didn't really do this. And then they walked up and said, here's another $500 for expenses because people gave too much money. And I said, you just want to be out of town. So I'm here. I've been a docent with the Friends for 20 some years, actually in on the beginning of that program. Have taught history of the Cumbres and Toltec at elder hostels at Ghost Ranch for a number of years, and just never been on this side of the shuttle, so it'll be fun to do that, punch that ticket. And maybe I get someone else to buy engineer school.
You also do HO scale modeling.
HO scale modeling, and I happen to be president of a group that's restoring a steam engine. The one in Alamosa, the 169, which is the sister of the 168 that's here. And the primary difference is that locomotive is owned by the Chamber of Commerce. And we have an agreement with the Chamber that nothing will be done with it until it can be paid for. So we're on a very different restoration track, which is gathering money up front, which is very hard to do. And I don't know, but what with the 168, we may convince the Alamosa Chamber that there may be another way to do this. And get 2 T12s running, which I think would make everyone happy.
Make a heck of a double header.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we need them for 5 cars, believe me. They are small locomotives, so anyway.
I'm Scott Proudfoot. I'm his son. I managed to get over here for fireman and engineer school earlier. And when I heard they had given him that, I started trying to get a ticket, and it was full up, and luckily somebody canceled. So I was able to come and play trains with my dad.
That's cool. So look out, if we're in a cab together, we may need the litigator.
Now he has to fire for me.
That's right, that's scary.
So Bob Bidwell is my name. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I am in the temporary staffing business. We provide industrial labor to the businesses up and down the Colorado Front Range. I knew there was going to be a question about why am I here? right? So I've been thinking about this for a while. And so and I kind of go back to, where did it all start? Why am I such a goofball every time I see a train? And I think it all stemmed from my father, who used to write a letter to his parents. We lived in Kansas. Every Sunday, he put this letter on this train. Big old Union Pacific steam engine would come in, and I'd go down to the train station with him every Sunday afternoon, and we'd get it on the train heading east. And I was just in awe of the size of that machine and its power. I think that's where it started. And I, of course, had a model train like most everybody. I moved on, and I wanted a go-kart. So I traded my model train for a go-kart engine that didn't work. And I was going to overhaul it and make it work and build a go-kart around it. Well, that never happened. So I got to eventually get back to model trains, and I kind of like the idea of the garden gauge. So I'm going to hopefully get some good pointers while I'm on here on G-gauge model trains. Ridden this train a couple of times, as early as maybe 1972.
With the 483.
Hasn't been recent though, so really looking forward to the class.
I mean, one of the things, if you are a model railroaders, once you do what we're going to be doing the next few days, you won't look at your models. It'll give you an entirely different look as to what it's all about. You look at the Model Railroad magazine, you look at stuff, and you go, boy, they've obviously never been around really yet. So you'll go back with some experiences that'll help you with your modeling too. Please.
I'm Paul. Actually, I do work for a railroad. It's a short line in Illinois. Mainly, it's a grain hauling operation.
Which one? The one on BC?
Bloomer line.
What?
The Bloomer line.
Oh, okay.
If anybody's ever seen any pictures in Trains magazine, our locomotives that we own actually are painted the red and gray and black with the CB&Q. We own 4 of those and 2 lease units, but I'm also a volunteer, 40-year volunteer on a Monticello, Illinois.
Oh, really?
And actually, this is our steam weekend that I'm missing out on.
Ouch.
But one of my biggest thrills down there has been my son was one of the instructors when I was going through fireman school. He's already a qualified fireman, and then recently, since he's become a long haul trucker, he's missed out on going through engineer school, but I've been able to move on, and right now I'm a student engineer, still learning. And just recently, he was my fireman, and my grandson was co-fireman. He's only 4 years old, but that was the thrill of my life right there. So this is going to be pretty tough to beat. But I've always been interested in the railroad, love the short or the narrow gauge, and this popped up last year on the horizon. I told my wife, before I get too fat, too old, and can't do it anymore, I want to try. So for my 60th birthday, I got presented a certificate that says youth opportunity to go.
From Tennessee, long ways away, I know. I've always been interested in trains ever since I was born around them in Huntsville, Alabama. Used to go to the depot all the time. There's a picture of me back home of me on the caboose there behind the old steam locomotive they have of me holding the handbrake. I was just a short little fella. But I did complete the fireman school barely because I was sick one day, like really sick from the altitude. I guess just haven't been over this way in 11 years, so that kind of attributed to that. But I'm back again, so.
by opening the priming valve here, and then you turn it on, and then you have to manually close the priming valve to make it run.
Okay.
Unlike with 401s where it all happens in one motion.
It's actually all one thing, but it's in two separate pieces.
Yes.
So half of it's up here, obviously. And the other below. So 191 had the non-lithium.
Oh, really? Was it a Hancock? Or, I don't think it was a Hancock. I think it was probably a Sellers.
Say hey, Russ.
Hey.
I don't remember. I'm thinking a little heavier.
Heavier across the back, and pretty much a horseshoe. Heavier across the back, and then up the sides, but it kind of tapers down on up the sides toward the front. And pretty good right in front of the door in the back. You know, pretty good bank all the way across the back.
Well, this does swing a little bit, right?
Yeah. It's steam driven, automatically governed to 130 pounds, 135. Keeps these two main reservoir tanks on the side, one under the running board on each side, and then the main reservoir keeps pumped up when it's operating. We'll start it here in a little bit. The two domes you see on the top of the engine, the front one is the sand dome that holds the sand for traction. The back one is the steam dome. That has got the throttle in it and the three safety valves on top of it and the whistle. The safety valves on these engines are set for 195 psi. The first one goes off, the second one 197, and the third one at 199. I have never seen more than one of them open at a time. And people have tried, believe me. The other two are just redundancy based on the size of the steaming capacity of the boiler. There has to be a certain amount of safety valve relief available. Now I think you probably all have gotten some instruction on this from the book as well. I haven't gone through the same class you are, so I'm not sure exactly what you all have gone through or been taught. The way the boiler is laid out, the part in the back here, the square part that sticks down the lowest, is the firebox area. And there's two sheets in there. It's double layered. And there's water in between the two. And there's an inside box that's actually smaller than the outside part you see. And that's where most of the heating of the water and the steam generation takes place, in the firebox. From there, the front of it, which starts right about at the front where you see the squared off section there, up to the back of the smoke box right here, contains, that's the main part of the boiler, and that contains the fire tubes that go through it. They are also all surrounded by water. And that gets the gases and the smoke and the heat from the firebox up into the smoke box in the front here, and that's where it gathers and is ejected out through the stack. Each cylinder exhaust, there's two cylinders on them. They're both double acting. In other words, the steam pushes the piston forward, it also pushes it back on each side. They're 90 degrees out on the crank case, so that's how you get 4 chucks per revolution of the drivers. Each of those exhausts goes up to a nozzle, up to the stack, and that pulls the gases along with it and ejects it out the stack. That creates draft, force draft through the fire, keeps the fire burning. The faster the engine's moving, the harder it works. The more draft you have, the more draft you get to the fire, and the better and hotter it burns. The other thing we've got up here, of course, is the bell. And this thing right back behind the steam dome with the little pipe sticking up and crook in the end is the dynamo. That's a steam-powered turbine generator. Generates 32 volts DC, and that runs the lights on just the locomotive, headlights and cab lights. Any questions so far? I'll tell you what, I'll take about 3 or 4 of you at a time up here, and let's take 3 firemen at a time up here. And I don't care who, just organize yourself and somebody come on up. I'll show you the cab. Bring one engineer with us. and some of the oil.
It's almost,
Okay.
looks a lot better.
Yeah, that's much better. All right. Open the oil valve. You can see this one doesn't take much at all to get a good flow on it.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so each of you guys come up there. You'll see the needle sticking up with a drop of oil forming on it. And if you watch, you'll see a drop of oil go up through float up through the water there. Now, when the pump is working lightly, like when we're just running around the yard or uphill, we normally run 2 drops per minute. When the pump's working hard, when we're using a lot of air coming down the hill, we normally run about 4 drops a minute.
There we go.
So to set it, you just watch a drop and time between drops and figure out how much you've got going.
And what's the ideal droplet rate?
If the pump's not working very hard, 2 drops a minute. If the pump's working hard, when we're using the air coming down the hill, 4 drops a minute.
And what appliances?
So
What appliances does it assist?
It strictly
The oil?
lubricates the steam side of the compressor, the air compressor.
Yeah, I forgot which way is it.
Well, it's a normal valve, that closes it. Turn right and close it, left close it.
Righty. It's just the orientation of it.
Oh, yeah.
It gives me all the time.
Let him get up there and take a look. Okay, so that's the first thing you do when you're going to start the air compressor. You close that one. That one is for the high pressure steam cylinder. This is a compound pump. Uses steam twice. First in a high pressure cylinder, then that goes through a low pressure cylinder, and then is exhausted up into the smoke box. Let it run a little bit until we get mostly steam coming out of here. And we close that one. Normally when we shut it down, we leave these drains cracked open on the air tanks. I already closed this one so it wouldn't be blowing out here. So we'll go around, make sure all the drains are closed now. Anytime you're walking around railroad equipment that's standing, you want to give yourself a little bit of room. Unless you have a reason to be right in front of it or right next to it, you want to give yourself 10 or 20 feet of space as you go around it, just in case something moves. You've got a little bit of leeway. And you don't ever want to go stand in front of or behind or in between pieces of equipment without having the protection of the crew knowing that you're there and the engineer know that somebody's in there. So basically I'm going to tell you just don't do it unless one of us tells you to. Okay, that's the other main reservoir drain. Several times a day you go and open these up to drain because they'll gather concentrate or condensation in them. And normally the other one gets most of it, so we drain that whenever water's in it several times a day. Close the rest of these valves. This little tank here is the equalizing reservoir that I was telling you about when we were talking about the brake. Looks like it's got them all. Good. Let's come on back up here. See you.
Bye.
Now that we've got some air coming up, the fire door pedals come to life. Okay, so we run the pump real slow until we get about 30-35 pounds of air on it. And then you can start slowly turning it up a little bit.
And that's the red needle on the big gauge.
Well, yes, this red needle in the big gauge is the actual main reservoir.
Main
pressure.
reservoir.
Yeah. Everything else is kind of following it right now because there's not enough air for it to all work right. Heat it up, we can open the pump up a little further. once we get about 50 pounds on it, we can open the valve on up wide open. Now anytime you stop the engine and you're going to leave it sitting, or if somebody's going to be going in between or for any reason, you always want to center the Johnson bar up on center. This is effectively neutral. And if you're going to be sitting for very long, you want to open, as I mentioned earlier, open the cylinder cocks. That allows anything that condenses in the cylinders to drain out, and not, if you leave them closed, it can actually fill the cylinders up with water and hydraulically lock the thing when it moves and blow out a cylinder head or bend the rod or something like that.
Or something worse.
I don't know very many things worse on one of these.
Aside from boiler explosion.
Yes.
And what's the ideal pressure on one of these locomotives for air in the reservoirs?
The main reservoir is automatically regulated to 130 to 135 pounds.
All right, forgot about that.
And that requires, for the pump to function properly, it requires a minimum of about 175 pounds of steam.
Okay.
It'll pump below that, but it doesn't have the same capacity. These are called 8.5-inch cross-compound air compressors. And they have, as I mentioned, both the steam is used in compound and the air side is compounded. There's a low-pressure air cylinder. It forces air over to the high-pressure cylinder, and it then forces it out into the main reservoir. At 200 pounds of pressure, one of these is rated to maintain 130 psi main reservoir pressure at 150 CFM cubic feet per minute usage. They're pretty efficient. They're actually still used in some applications. I think there's still some power plants that use them as auxiliary air or backup, things like that. Places that have steam available all the time and also need compressed air.
I got a decent gust of wind going out there. Normally I'd be okay with gusts, but I don't know. It's dry as hell out here.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we got going on right now. We are in an extreme drought right now, and running under extreme fire danger. And so we are being super careful about what we do.
Hence the restricted speed.
So the black hand on the big dial is the...
That's the equalizing reservoir.
Okay.
The white one on the small one is the brake pipe. Those two should always be the same,
Okay.
or within a pound or two of the same, just based on the accuracy of the gauge. Now they should be set at 90 pounds. When a lot of these two valves here are called feed valves, and they're pressure regulating valves that regulate the pressures. This bottom one is the valve for the brake pipe. It's the one that's regulated to 90 pounds. This top one is the regulation for the 45 pounds for the independent brake. But a lot of these valves are old and they don't work perfectly anymore, some of them. So sometimes when an engine's just sitting by itself, there's so little leakage in the brake pipe that these things can seep a little bit and the brake pipe will slowly climb up over 90. That's why probably why you're seeing it there now. When we get coupled to a train, there's enough natural leakage throughout the brake pipe and the train that they work fine and maintain the way they're supposed to. So to make a reduction on one of these, there's on the automatic brake valve, we'll start with the independent first. This is where it is now is called slow application. And when you put it over there, it will maintain the brake on the engine at 45 pounds. If you push it all the way over to the right, that's quick application. Same pressure, it just comes on a little faster. Where it's at now is called running. Over here, pushed against the spring, is called the bail position. I'll show you in a minute what that's for. And then this other notch right here is called lap. Now when you go to slow application, you'll see the pressure slowly come up. If you go over to fast application, it should come up a little faster. This one doesn't go a lot faster. And in lap, we'll just hold the pressure where it is. Now if there's some leakage in the system, it will slowly leak down. So you don't want to depend on a lap to hold the engine standing when you're just going to leave it sitting well. Anytime the engine's sitting and you want it to stay there, you want to leave it in the slow application position. Okay, the automatic brake valve has, over here all the way to the left is called the release position, and what that does is that is a quick charge position for the brake pipe. If you need to get a lot of air into it quickly, that connects the main reservoir pressure directly to the brake pipe. The danger of using that is you can overcharge the brake pipe because it bypasses the feed valve when you've got it over there. So if you overcharge the train, then the brake valves in the train get confused and they can do all sorts of bad things.
So only when you're hooking up to a long
You
train.
won't ever need to use it.
Okay,
We won't run a long enough train where you'll need to use it. Where it's now, the position it's in right now is called running. That's the next one over. And in that position, it will release the engine brake, assuming you have this in the running position, and it will charge the brake pipe to 90 pounds, to whatever this feed valve down here is set for. That's the position that releases the brakes on everything. That's the position you carry it in when you're just running over the road. You don't want any of the brakes set.
Now you said it will release the engine brake in this position?
It will allow the engine brake to release.
Oh,
allow
okay.
it.
If you have it in the running
This
position.
Okay, the next position over is called holding. What that does is it charges the train, it will release the train brake, but if you release the engine brake, it will not allow it to release. So you go to running.
All those simulators were a lie.
Well, this is an ancient system.
Well, and there were different systems.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of, what we've got here is called the 6ET system. Number 6 air, engine, and tender is what that stands for. And the next there's several iterations of this and a whole bunch of new ones. I'm not even going to talk about any of those.
This system got rid of the need for the mountain valve on the tenders?
Well, the previous system to this, actually there was a 5ET which was almost identical to this. And you know what, I've never seen it, I've just heard of them. The previous system to this was the A1 system, and it did not have, native to it, did not have the independent brake. It strictly, there was a triple valve on the engine, a triple valve on the tender. They behaved just like a car in the train. To set them, you had to make a reduction.
Okay.
Later on, they added an option to it called straight air, which was a separate valve and some extra check valves in there that was similar to this, but it still didn't work quite the same way. This system integrated it all together in one neat system that functions happily together.
I just remember seeing retainers on tenders.
Yeah, that's the old A1 system. If you look at 315, it's got an A1 system with a straight air brake valve on it. And the 168 that we're rebuilding will eventually. These engines were built with it. This is actually an upgrade sometime in the mid to late 40s. They upgraded to 6ET on these. Okay, so the next one over here, the next step over here is again lap. Does the same thing, more or less. So to make a reduction or to make an application of the train brakes, I'm going to go ahead and release them so you can actually see what it does. So to make an application of the train brakes, you're going to want to watch this gauge, and you're going to want to, say you want a 5-pound reduction, you hold it over here in the application. You watch the equalizing reservoir until it drops the amount you want, and you move it over there to lap. You need more train brake. Now you'll notice when you'll hear that little blow, and you haven't heard a big blow in here because that's happening outside. We've got this air plumbed outside, so you don't have to listen to all that air blowing in. Some of our engineers are just aghast that we did that. Oh my gosh, I can't hear it. That's the whole idea. So to release it now, you'll notice also that the engine brake's set up, even though I've got it in running here, because it will act just like a car in the train due to the distributing valve. It'll go ahead and set up the same as the cars in the train will. Now if it does that and you don't want it set, that's what this veil position is for. You push it over here. That'll release your engine brake.
Engine and tender.
Engine and tender. Yes, they always do. The engine and tender are always together, whatever you're doing. Unless you cut them out over here. That cuts out the driver brakes. Just the
When you're bailing off, you're releasing them?
You're releasing just the engine and tender brake, not the train. It has no effect whatsoever on the train. And a lot of engineers, most engines, these driver cutouts, we call them, they're technically called mountain cocks, are kind of peculiar to particularly the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, but railroads that ran in the mountains that used a lot of air, had to use a lot of air to get trains off of hills. The normal procedure for this on most railroads is every time you set the train brake, you reach up here and you bail off the engine brake because you don't want it to set up.
Now, does this leak into it like the low set? Because you just released twice. That's why
Well,
you didn't
yes.
release at all.
No,
Okay.
well, and when you've got a set on it, the distributing valve will reset itself if it sees a reduction in the brake pipe again. It can set again, even after you've bailed
Right.
it off. Or sometimes leakage in the system will cause it to creep back on, things like that. So then to go to release the train brake, you go all the way over here running. And again, that will release the train brake, and if there's a set on the engine and tender, it'll release that as well. And this is creeping back up. All right. Now, if you watch when I make another reduction, watch the white hand on the small gauge there. See how it kind of pulses, drops a little bit, doesn't go down smoothly. That's because there's such a small volume of air that we're dealing with in the brake pipe that this equalizing piston opens, makes its reduction, closes, and then as the equalizing reservoir continues to drop, it has to keep doing that. With a train with a decent amount of volume in the brake pipe, you won't see that. It'll just be a constant flow out of there to equalize with the equalizing reservoir when you make it. Okay. Now the last thing we have to do is anytime we park one of these, we put a chain under the number 4 driver so it won't wander off on its own. When we go anywhere, we have to get the chain out.
Dates the trains coming in.
Yep, I think that's 484.
Mr. Fisher, quick question. This engine get serviced?
It did.
Okay. Is that
They
was on
serviced everything. They oiled around. They did everything for us.
Okay. That was on.
That engine's not been serviced. They did get it serviced. Just for us.
Well, just not either.
Okay, so I guess we're ready to go out and once those guys get in, wander around the countryside.
15 twisting for the.
I guess we'll was on, this is the other one that's, give it a come ahead. Give him a couple of things. Okay. All right, for starters here, make sure your headlight's on bright on forward. That's the switch right here. That's off. That's back up right, back there. That I can't say. Probably in your pocket. Oh.
One glove wonder.
That's all right, that's all you need to run it in.
Yeah.
So that's reverse. That's mute. That's shut off, both of them. That's forward headlight. You know, forward there is bright and dim. You are on forward bright and you're going that direction. Okay? So to start out, put the Johnson bar all the way down, all the way forward. We call that in the corner when it's all the way in one extreme or the other. And as you start out, once you get moving, you want to hook it up about 4 notches. Then a little further, you'll hook it up a little further as you increase the speed. So, a couple of toots on the whistle. Some bell. What was that? Go to bell. Right here.
Right there.
Okay. Release your engine brake. You know, on the throttle, when you open it, you just gotta stamp it open a little bit. Stop. That's where you're just up against the ticket and slack out of liquid. Use the slack to bump it open. Most of the moves you'll make with the throttle will be just bumping it a little bit like that one way or the other. So just bump it open and then hold it for how it makes sense. Right here. A little more. You haven't got it yet. You gotta bump it pretty hard. There you go. Okay, now reach down and close the top so the lemon don't slow the top out of the back. Okay, now you can hook the Johnson bar up a few notches. That's good. Okay, now hook it up a few more notches. About 4 more, right there, that's a good spot. Where's the speedometer? I never saw that.
He'll tell you about that too. Count the revolutions of the drive.
So you want to just bump your throttle a little bit so you can move it just a little bit the way you want. Don't pull on your head on it. Put the head forward. Right, let's see what we got here, Paul. Right corner to the right side. There's not much grade out here. You can kind of move it along. Yeah, go ahead. Paul, hit it. Hit it on the back corners and under the door. Right there, right here. Oh, to get to the back corner. Flip it over there. Yeah, perfect. Same thing on the right side. Now let's shake the water right now.
Yes, we don't need to put any water in.
Not just yet.
For everything else I do normal, except for the left-hand corner, and I turn the shovel over, or turn my hand over, right?
I always hold the hand the same way. Put the wrist back in. Put the shovel back here. It'll be a lot easier in the long run if you learn to hold it the right way. Now you want to time your whistle too long, too short, too long.
Fully occupy the crossing.
What I was going to tell you is you want to time your whistles so that the last one carries the end of the process.
Looked them up a run crossing like that. Fireman got high like gun traffic like that clown with pickup truck and kind of eyeballing up there. Got high on stomach. Well, it's just a little bit more. Hey,
Let you guys trade now, okay? We'll have you shovel a little bit in there. Alright. You want to open the door and look in there. Right out in the middle. Put a shovel coal right on that. Right with the shovel. Hold this right there. Just like that. There you got it. The left hand goes down on the shake. What's fun is you shovel full of coal, and on your way to the door with it, you want to step on the pedal and open the door. So you don't keep it open any longer. You absolutely have to. So go ahead and put one more out there.
looks like maybe just a little along that side, about that far up.
There you go, perfect.
Show off. Alright, so once it picks up.
So you're going to run the injector? Yeah, you got the priming valve open. Oh, there you go.
No.
Okay, when you're ready, back in reverse. All the way back. There you go. That's good. You don't have to get all the way back, just most of the way. Alright. Okay? And then release your brake, 3 toots for the back end move. And just get it started, and then you can close the throttle and then grip. Okay, now close the throttle all the way down. Okay, now anytime you're drifting, you want to leave the Johnson bar in the corner. So you can see where it's at.
Got it.
Okay, act like a fireman.
Fine there. Grab the scoop.
That's like our main line conductor, Paul.
Oh.
Preferably with your eyes closed. There you go. Okay, easy down a little bit. A little bit of air. Right all the way down there. No mirrors?
Oh, come on, Bill.
No what?
No mirrors? Like the diesels I run, we've got speeding mirrors. Like a semi, I've got it too.
Windshield with a bear on the bottom.
It's probably not going to stay put very long.
Right.
Bounce a bunch.
We only have one guy in the camp.
How much over that though?
Well, we're going around the corner on the back side.
You know, by the time you get to that little pile of front, that little close right there, where you have that wall in front.
Okay.
That'll be about right. Oh,
Drink water?
no, we're just coming up on the Chama River Bridge, headed into town for our last visit. Got a couple of motor cars coming in. We've got our last trip here.
All clear.
And we're going to
All clear. Public relations, that's another one of God's. Well, raise everybody. Yep. Use your full hand, too. Full hand, teammate. Yeah. No,
give her another drink, Paul.
Okay, I brought this all the way back. And there's no overflow there. I actually have it shut off.
That's Paul. Always Paul.
But I mean,
Don't put water on silver flow.
no, 13.
Pull it all the way back to make it run.
File this back. Everybody's going now.
Now it's working. Now it's put on the floor.
So all the way back.
Now the overflow has to be closed for water in.
All right. I'm doing it right. Double check, make sure. Hey,
Warning listen to the yard.
we want to go down below 155.
Pull on down right just this side of the water tank. Stop there again. Got it.
And then leave the overflow closed.
Close. Yeah.
All right.
Now you only open it when you want to prime the ejector to start it, otherwise it's always closed. Anywhere here will be good. Sit off the junction bar. It's not an open finger top. Alright, good deal. Hey, thank you. Good job, guys. Alright.
Look forward to more. Double duty for the three of us.